Okay, now I'm recording. Okay, so out on the website we do have our link to our recordings, our past meetings, our deal section, our eBytes newsletter, and that's all out on the site there. Any club questions before we get to the main topic? Okay. Oh, yep.
What are the prices?
What's that? Yeah.
The prizes have been ordered for the picnic and have all been received.
Okay, Linda orders the prizes, so she has a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun. We give her suggestions, and she asks for, well, what's something new or trendy or things like that. And she usually buys most of the stuff from Newegg, isn't it? And so some of the stuff may be refurbished. It's a great deal, and the stuff we've never had a problem with the stuff. And this way, for a $500 budget, in some cases she's getting $1,500 worth of stuff. TVs. In the past, we've had a little bit of everything. So it's always interesting to see the items there, and everybody has a good time there. Okay. Okay, our main topic today is file backup. It's not a matter of if you'll ever need a backup, but only when. We all have problems and make mistakes, so the best you can do is be prepared to get back your information. And so today we'll cover backing up your personal files. And I've got this little cartoon, Dilbert there. Don't let your disaster recovery plan be just waving your arms and yelling, "Help, help, I've lost my files." And believe me, I have gotten people like that. People have had their phones or had problems, and then it's after the fact they go, "Well, help me, my hard drive crashed. What can we do here?" And in some cases, there are some things to try and get it back, but it's certainly a lot easier if you have your backup strategy and you are doing it on a daily basis. You're not going to have the major problem where everything's gone and you're trying to figure out what you can do. I mentioned here we won't talk too much about backing up and recovering the operating system or software that you have on there or apps, because that's usually done using other tools and other techniques for doing it. If you are interested in your tablet and your phones, we did have a session or a meeting back in June 2014. So go out to the website, you can look at the handout, you can look at the things, and that'll tell you how to back up those devices. Okay, why would you want to back up? Well, the first thing is you do run into problems. Human error. You accidentally delete a file or you modify it and you wished you had back the old version or what it was like 6 months ago or a year ago. You want to get back to something. I mentioned hard drive crash. Certainly in the early days of the PC, hard drives crashed more frequently. If you juggled or dropped your machine, or laptops had more trouble with hard drives crashing, the head would essentially crater into the disk and wipe out data there. You don't hear about that much anymore. It still can happen, but the hard drives are more reliable. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow you could have a meltdown in your computer. The lithium batteries catch on fire and wipe out your hard drive. So there's still problems with hard drives. Another problem is file corruption. Software. There's no such thing as perfect software out there. So all of them have bugs, and the wrong bug can accidentally wipe out files out there, overwrite data. They can cause all kinds of problems there. Lost or stolen device. Certainly, if we're talking about a smartphone or a tablet, it's easy to leave it somewhere or somebody to steal it. But even at home, over the years, I've known several people that have had their house and apartment building broken into and their desktop units stole. And in both those cases, the people did have a backup strategy. They just had an external hard drive that they connected to their PC, but it was sitting right with the rest of the hardware. Well, the person boxed up everything, took the backup, and their pictures, their photos, everything was gone. They had it on a hard drive, but the hard drive was gone along with the PC. So hopefully what you'll get out of today's session is you have to really think about your strategy, where you're going to have your backups, and where things are going to be there. The last problem here is viruses. Viruses certainly can affect the PC and cause problems with files. More recently, it's ransomware. And ransomware, if you're not familiar, is it's a virus that gets installed on your PC, starts encrypting your files, and then demands that you pay a ransom. And that ransom can be a couple $100 up to a couple $1,000 to get your files back. So the only way you'd be able to get your files back is to pay this person, and it's usually in bitcoins. You have to send them bitcoins over to Russia or that to get your files that have been encrypted back. But if you've got a backup, you can just say, oh, I'm just going to restore and I'm going to get my data, and I don't need to pay the ransom there.
Hey, Tom, do you know if
Yep.
that would encrypt like external hard drives that are connected to it?
Yes, encryption can get at anything that your PC has connected to it. So if you have flash drives, if you have hard drives, it usually seeks out everything, because obviously the more content that it can encrypt, the more money they're going to charge for you to get it back. And it's not only individuals that have been hit, certainly hospitals, police departments, there's all kinds of businesses that have been hit too.
How about online drives?
Online drives, depends on how you have them connected. So if you had cloud storage and you have it linked to files on your PC and they encrypt the files on your PC, now they're encrypted up there. However, the good side of cloud storage is cloud storage usually has a way for you to get back. I want to go back 6 months, get my files as they look 6 months ago. But the current ones, as they are out there, it probably linked them and updated them with the same encryption there. Okay. Okay, another reason to back up, and this is one certainly that it becomes more popular now, is to move or share files from one device to another or with other people. So nowadays you may be doing stuff at work or at home and you want to share stuff between those two places, and that because these devices tend to last 2-3 years, you're replacing them, whether it's laptops, tablets, the smartphones, you're replacing it. So the mere setting up a new device, you usually want to get back a number of your files, whether it's music or pictures or settings or things like that. You want to get those devices or those settings back there. I mentioned sharing from a smartphone or a tablet, just so that when you update something, you're seeing it on all these devices at the same time. And the backup strategy or where your files are is going to make it easier to share. Also, you have, for legal purposes, archiving, maybe tax information, or if you have a small business, or just keeping track of stocks and 401ks and things like that. You want to make sure that you've got that data for legal purposes there. And the last one here is to share with family and friends. So now that you do have stuff backed up, maybe you can also share at the same time with them. Okay, before you start backing up, the first thing that you should do is you should figure out how you're going to organize your files and folders. And the first thing with the files is to make sure that you use meaningful names when creating or updating files. So as an example, most of us take pictures. The cameras that we use, whether it's a smartphone or any digital camera, is going to give you this cryptic name that really means nothing to nobody there. I end up renaming all those files to a meaningful name so that I can keep track of them, I can sort them, I can find things a lot easier there. So I put a month, day, and a year as the file name on instead of the default name that comes from the camera there. So there's things that you can do there, and it's not just for photos. It can be for any package that you're using when it creates a file. Just think about what should I name this, and what's gonna be a good name 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, for me looking for that file or trying to find things. Okay, also when creating or updating a file, decide if you need to keep a separate file for every change or version, or do you only need to keep the most current version there. And this is an important consideration if you're going to try and do versioning. So every time you make a change, do you attempt to keep the current version and the previous version and all the previous versions? You can do that. So if you're going to keep it, you may want to be putting a year or a month or a day in the file name with each of the different versions that you save. And that can be at the beginning of the file name or at the end of the file name, just somewhere in the file name, so that you keep the versions straight there. I don't recommend doing versioning for a lot of files, so you should only do it for the few files that you really do need versions for, because most of the files, all people need is the most current version. If you ever have to go back to a previous version, that's what your backups are going to have that, but they're going to have that same name when it was backed up a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. You'd have that file out there. The other thing with versions is some of the packages, if you're using like a Microsoft Office, you can turn versioning on. So the versions are essentially kept within the same file, and you can go back or forward and see who made a change at any time and get versions there. So some of the more advanced packages will automatically do versions. Also, if you're doing stuff on the cloud, if you use Google Docs, their word processor or spreadsheet or that'll automatically do versioning there, where you can get back previous versions and that also up there. So check with the package that you're using or the site that you're using if it's automatically doing some versions already there for you. Okay, another thing you want to do is organize your files. By default, the standard Windows comes with folders, a folder called Documents, a folder called Music, a folder called Pictures, and Videos to start organizing at a high level these things. And then underneath these folders, you can start creating your subfolders, and that may be broken out based on the number of files that you're going to have. Some people don't end up creating that many files, so they may only need 1 or 2 folders. Other people have hundreds or thousands of documents, spreadsheets, things like that, and they're going to need more, or should have more folders, and should have it more organized there. And you can create these folders based on a number of factors, maybe things like activities that you're doing. So it could be a project that you're working on, or you're working with the school, or you're working with the church, or you have things that you're doing there. You break it out by that. Otherwise, maybe you just break it out by dates. So this is a folder where I put all the things that I've worked on this year in 2017, and I have another folder for stuff that I was working on in 2016. Break it out by that. And you can also break it out by packages. Usually a software will create its own directory or put stuff in there. But you don't have to keep stuff in their own directory. If you're only going to have 1 or 2 files, you may want to combine several of them together just to make it easier to manage and figure out there. But again, it's a strategy that you kind of have to look at how you use your computer, how many files do you have, and come up with a strategy that makes it easy to find things. I mentioned here if you use cloud storage, you may have additional subfolders within any of these documents and pictures and stuff like that you may have. And that's to manage which files are synced between the PC and the cloud. You may not be syncing all the files that you have, so then it's important to create a subdirectory, and this is the ones that are going to be synced, and then there's other ones that aren't going to be synced. So that can be a strategy there. If you haven't looked at your directory in Windows, at the root level, at the C level, there's a directory called user, and that's where kind of all the user data starts, and that's the topmost. And underneath that, you have subfolders for the current user that's logged on. So when you set up the machine, you define the current user, and that created a subfolder there. Now, if you have other members of the family logging onto the computer, they're each going to have their own folder there where they're going to have their own documents, their own music, their own pictures, and they can store stuff there. There's also directories where if you want to share stuff between all users, and it's called all user, or default, or public, there's user directories out there to start storing information that way. Okay, next we'll talk about what should you back up. Now that you've organized your stuff and you put your subdirectories underneath these main areas and that, what should you be backing up? And the most important folders are the folders where you put your personal documents, your data. And these are the ones intended to be the user's common repository. And so you want to make sure you're usually backing up your documents directory, your music directory, your pictures directory, and your video directory there. So you want to start out with those. Also, you want to get the start menu. So you've usually done some customization to identify those applications that you use and how that looks and stuff like that. Well, it's easy to back that up if you just back up this particular folder here. It contains all of the start menu software groups and icons. Desktop items, all those settings and what's in there are in another directory out here, so you want to make sure you back that up also. Favorites. This is the favorites for Internet Explorer. They're stored in a directory here. So if you're using Internet Explorer, you'll want to back that up also. If you're using other packages like Chrome, Chrome has an option by default where it's taking your favorites and storing them up in the cloud and then making them available on the other devices. So it's already backing up that information, and it's available up on the cloud for you. In addition to what directories to back up, you also want to figure out what don't you need to back up. And some of the stuff that you don't need to back up is maybe stuff that you've already are backing up to the cloud. Because if it's already backed up to the cloud, that's the most secure, that's the most foolproof. If they have their servers such that if there's fires or if there's a virus or anything there's multiple copies, and they don't have the issues that you'd have with your own backups. The other thing on the cloud that you, because it's stored up on the cloud, is things like your email. All your email, and if you've saved emails, the folders and all the information in there, the attachments and things like that. You usually don't have to worry about backing any of that up because, again, if you're using the cloud, Gmail or that, it's all backed up there. You don't have to worry. And that's true of things like email, calendar, contacts. If you use OneNote, all of those and any other data that's stored or shared on the internet is backed up already there. Now, one of the things I mentioned in terms of like email is, and I know a lot of people still do it, is don't use your internet provider's email address as your main account. So if you're getting your internet from Comcast and you still are using your Comcast account, I wouldn't recommend doing that. And the main reason for that is that at some point you're going to switch internet providers, move somewhere, find a better deal, whatever. You're going to end up switching providers and you're going to lose that email. And that's going to cause you a ton of problems trying to change all the accounts that you may have set up and pointed to that old email, and then also trying to get that old mail somehow over to your new mail. There's ways to do some of that, but it's very difficult and very complex there. So it's much, much better to not use that account that comes from your internet provider, but instead create a Gmail account. They're free. And use that, and that way when you do switch to any, you can do it. You can also use an Outlook account, but I think Gmail is much better there. And it will make it a lot easier switching to a different internet provider. If you end up using packages like Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides, those are free packages. Those will use the Google Drive. And so, again, that stuff is automatically going to be backed up for you. You can have unlimited. It's free for all. I could create a million spreadsheets out there in Google Drive, and it wouldn't cost me a penny there. Google Drive only counts the files that are not Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, and other things there. So, space-wise, there's reasons to use some of these applications. Also, if you do use the Microsoft Office 365, that comes with a terabyte of space out on OneDrive, the Microsoft cloud storage. So depending on the package that you're using, you may already have this storage. You may already have this stuff being backed up. This is a rule. I think Jim first brought it up. He gave the last presentation on backup, 2 years ago, or 2015 or 2014. And he found this, use the rule of 3 or the 3-2-1 rule. And this is sound advice that we all should follow. Have at least 3 copies of your important files. The original, a backup of the original, and a backup of the backup. You can have more copies, but have at least 3. The backup should be on at least 2 different devices or services. So what that means is, okay, if it's in this cloud service, do you also have it locally on your PC or on a hard drive? Or do you have it on a smartphone? Or do you have it on a tablet? Or do you have it on some other device, an external drive, a flash drive? Do you have it on some other device or some other service somewhere? At least one of these devices or services should be in an off-site location. So just like I mentioned, 2 people where somebody had taken their computer, you don't want to have it in the same spot. Or if a fire happens, you don't want to have everything burned down and your backups are all gone. No, you want to have it somewhere else where it's if something terrible happens, you'll still be able to restore and get your data there. Okay, what can you use to back up? Well, if you don't have that many files, a flash drive can be a good device to use to back up. It's good for a small volume, incremental backups that are done daily, and you can rotate it month to month. And I know a few people that have a low volume. They don't create that many new documents, and they don't have that many pictures or things like that. And they end up using a flash drive. The flash drive is plugged into the PC, and once a month they swap it with another one, and that. Personally, myself, I have a number of different strategies. I use 2 external USB hard drives, and I rotate those the first of each month between a fireproof safe I have and a PC. So mine are locked up. My backups of the backups are in the safe, and that. In the past, when I was working here at 3M, I'd bring in the hard drive into work here, and I'd keep one hard drive here, and I'd keep one hard drive at home. Again, that's that multiple sites. If there ever was a fire or a problem or something happened, I'd have access to the other site there, and I could get my data there. My backup, I have over 90,000 files that end up getting backed up, which is almost 200 gigabytes of data. And to back up or do a full backup of all that takes roughly 4 hours to do. Most of my backups, we'll talk a little bit more about how backups are done, but I do incrementally every day the ones that have changed, and that backup takes less than 5 minutes and is usually less than 500 files there. When I rotate my hard drive, so when I unplug one hard drive and plug in a new one, I end up renaming the directory that I have to put today's date on it. So that's the way I keep multiple versions on the drive, and this means I can go back, in my case, up to 3 years on each of the drives there. And I delete old versions, so I don't keep every monthly one. So as it starts getting older, I delete old versions, because otherwise I'd need bigger hard drives and stuff like that out there. Another option is places like Google Photos. Google Photos lets you back up, share, and organize all your photos from all your devices, and if they're high quality, you can have unlimited photos out there. So that can be your strategy for backing up, like the photos and that. Music, if you've digitized music, where from records or CDs that you have, another option that I personally use is Google Music. Google Music, I can back up all of my music to Google Music, and then it's available to download, share, and do other things with. I mentioned here that if you purchased your music, let's say from like an iTunes or Amazon or that, there's no need to back it up, because you're always going to be able to download it again from iTunes or from Amazon there. And in some cases, they put in security so that you can't back it up or put it on some of the other devices. But if it's music that you've digitized, make sure you got it backed up, and you can store stuff out here. Yes?
I was just thinking back on the flash drive part. That's the kind of drive that I've had fail the most. So if you're doing backups on the flash drive, I would recommend maybe rotating even more than monthly, because it just seems like...
Okay, for those that may not have heard Jim is mentioning that he's had the most problems with the flash drive, having a problem reading it or losing files out there. So you may want to be aware of that. And I think, there it kind of goes back to, if you've got a name brand flash drive, better chance that it's going to be around than something that you got free at a seminar, or you ordered from China and it cost you $2. There's different quality, but because there's electronics in them, they're not indestructible. The contacts can go bad. The electronics in the flash drive can go bad. And if they go bad, like Jim is saying, when they go bad, it's a hard disk crash. You can't read. You can't do anything. It's not like you're going to pry it open and get some information off of there. So If that's going to be your backup mechanism, certainly consider some of these other things, and that's where having it on multiple services or devices, whether it's the cloud or some of these other things, that's where multiple strategies makes sense there to make sure if you do have a problem, you do have it backed up. Okay. Let's see. Where do you want to back up to? Well, another option is online and cloud storage. Cloud storage does tend to be more expensive for those sites that you have to pay for the storage than an external drive. It can be slower to back up depending on your internet speed. If you don't have gigabyte internet speed, you have both an upload and a download speed. So even though I have 40 megabyte internet, my upload speed is 5, and between packets and stuff like that, I'm probably really getting about 1 megabit so per second. So it's a case of if you're backing up 200 gigabytes of information, it's going to run for days, and that so. It can be slow, but if you're just synchronizing your changes, again, that's not going to take that long to do. And an advantage of the cloud storage, you access anywhere. These are some examples of the 3 biggest cloud storage. Google Drive, you can sign up and you'll get 15 gigabytes free. So certainly by all means try it. If you do want to purchase more, you can purchase 100 gigabytes for $1.99 a month, or 1 terabyte for $9.99 a month. Microsoft OneDrive, there you get 5 gigabytes free. 50 gigabytes is $1.99. If you do purchase Office 365 Personal, you can purchase that for $69 a year. Then you get 1 terabyte of storage out on the Microsoft OneDrive. And Dropbox is the third one there, and 2 gigabytes is free. You can get a 1 terabyte for $9.99 a month. Okay.
Before you leave that, we're talking about the cloud storage. How secure is that? For example, if you have files that have social security numbers, financial data, passwords in them, is this a good idea?
It's usually more secure than your home computer. So unless you've taken steps on your home computer to encrypt things and stuff like that, it's more likely that your home computer, a virus will get on there and somebody will have access to your files. So it's the rare case when that happens, and but certainly it doesn't mean that if you have something that's super sensitive that you really want to make sure, one of the strategies can be taking that data on the PC, encrypting it, and then storing it up on the cloud. So then if somebody gets at it, they don't have the encryption key, they can't do anything with it. So there's ways to protect yourself. I wouldn't recommend doing it for every file, and let's say it's photographs. Well, again, how secure do you have to be, Yes.
I think that goes back to your other topic about passwords too, because if somebody gets a password to your cloud account, well, they've got the whole thing, right?
Right. Passwords, like Jim when he gave his deal, the passwords are the most important thing to keep and change and make sure that that's secure. But should it prevent you from using some of these strategies? I'd say no. Just be aware and make sure you change it. Make sure you don't have a password that's the name of the dog and you've used it on 100 other sites, the same name. No, you want a different password on this site and a different password on that site. So when the state of Minnesota gets hacked and they get access, like they've reported, you don't lose everything there, or somebody doesn't have access to all your other accounts. Okay? Okay, types of backup. I talked a little bit about, you have, when you go into a backup program, you'll see things like a full backup, and that's kind of easy. That's all the files that you designate will be backed up every time. But if you're doing that every single day and every single time that you're doing it, you may end up with more files that can be backed up in a day, so you can't back up. You know, mine, like I mentioned, 90,000 files, it takes roughly 4 hours to back it up. Well, I don't want to be doing that every day. So instead of that happening every day, that just happens the first of the month. And then after that, I'm doing incremental backups of just the changes since the last full backup there. So you have incremental. Another term here is differential. And that's just the newer changes since the last full backup. So it used to be that people would do backups on tapes or CDs or things like that, and then these differentials and where you backed up, you needed to plan a better strategy there. So when it came time to restore, you'd start restoring this version, and then you'd do this file and this file and this file and this file in a certain order. Well, now the packages have made it easy, so some of these types of backups, the differential and that, isn't as important as what it was 20 years ago. Another thing with the backups is make sure that you use automatic scheduling. And the automatic scheduling is just when is it going to run and what's it going to do there. Personally, you'll see the settings that I use. The first of each month, I end up doing the full backup there, and then the daily is incremental backups. What to use to backup? I don't recommend using backup software like Windows Backup. They require the use of that software to restore the files or copy them from the backup. It's usually done in a proprietary format that only their software can open up and work with. So I don't recommend these other packages. The package that I do recommend is called Koban Backup, and it's a free package. You can download it from the site I list there, and it's been on our list of free software and recommended software. I mean, I think I've used it for 20 years or 25, and it's still the top-rated backup program, free backup program out there. When you back up, it has many advanced features. I'll show you some of those features. But the way that I back up, I don't do compression and I don't do encryption, which means that the files and the directories that they're stored in are stored exactly as you see on the device. So a restore can be done using any package like File Manager or that to bring back the files. Again, because I'm not using encryption or compression or anything there. My settings, I schedule it to run daily at 1 a.m. I do the incremental I mentioned. But the way it's a bit misleading because you'll see when I show you the tasks that I have in the backup, I only have one task to do an incremental. But Koban bases that incremental by looking at the files that are on the PC and looking at the drive and directory where I want to back it up. And if that drive and directory is a brand new drive and directory the first of the month, I have no files out on the hard drive. So when it says, what's incrementally different between these two? Well, because there's no files out here, it backs up everything. So whenever I swap out my hard drive and that, it does a new backup, complete full backup of all 90,000 files there. And it constantly, every day is going to compare those. So the next day it says, okay, I'm going to do an incremental backup. Oh, only these 10 files have changed in the last day. Those are the only 10 files that it has to back up and move over. And it does that very, very fast. So again, the incremental backups only take minutes to run, whereas the full backup takes 4 hours to run there. Coban ends up, you have options, and I recommend this option. Install it as a service, which means that it's running inside Windows. So if Windows gets rebooted or things like that, the service gets started automatically and is running there. I don't use any encryption or password there. I don't use any compression. I include the directories that we talked about earlier, so the documents and the music and the photos and all those directories. I exclude directories, so I have a temp directory where I specifically put some stuff that I'm working on that I don't care if that gets lost or things like that. I exclude those directories. So now we'll go in and just a quick demo there.
Tom, do you need 90,000 files?
I'm backing up all my photos, I'm backing up all my music, and all my other files. So it's again up to you. What can you afford to lose? What can you afford to lose? Oh, yeah.
Can Coban back up to a hard drive and a cloud drive at the same time?
Coban can be used. You'll see here when. I guess the short answer is yes, because usually what you have with a cloud storage, be it Dropbox or stuff like that, is you designate drives and folders on your PC that are going to be backed up to the cloud. So anything that you put in that folder or that is automatically going to get synced to the cloud. So just you do your backup, put the stuff in there, and then that'll move it there. So that's the way that you can do it. Now, the other way to do it is most of the packages for the cloud storage, let's say it's Word files that you're concerned with. Well, you could point and say, this is a directory on my PC that I want synced up to the cloud. So in that case, you wouldn't have to go through Coban to back up to a directory to go to the cloud. It could automatically be going to the cloud. So that's where I mentioned when you're creating your directories and subdirectories, maybe you have an extra directory that these are the Word files that I want synced to the cloud. Okay. Any other questions before we go to the demo here? Okay. So I've got Coban running on this machine here, and it's this little icon down here. So let's go here, we'll open it up, and when you open it up, what it does is it shows you this is the list of all the tasks that you have set up. So on this machine, I just have one task here, and this one task is those options that I talked about. You give it a name, you tell it whether you want to include subdirectories, what type of backup do you want, and mine's an incremental, but like I mentioned, the first of the month, because there's no files out there, it ends up doing a full backup. Files, you specify directories that you want backed up, and then this is the destination and name that you want it in here. And again, it can be, if you do have other servers on your network or stuff like that, it could point to a shared drive, or it could point to other things there. It also supports things like, if you're familiar with FTP, to send it to other servers and more advanced things, but for most users this is sufficient there. You have a schedule that can be set up, dynamics, it can automatically rename the directory so that you end up with separate directories for each backup if you want that. So this is where you can set up compression or encryption there. Filtering, exclude these particular files or drives. You can get down to that level there. You can see here I'm excluding temp and this recording directory. Events, what you can do is the scheduler will not only fire this event, but if you have another program you want to run, or a BAT file or something like that that you want to run before it does its backup, you can have it run before it does its backup or after it does its backup. So you can add additional tasks or programs that you want to have run. And then there's some stuff for more advanced stuff that you don't have to use. But so these are the tasks. To create a new task, you just go up here, you click on the task, let's say PCC demo, and so I go here. Usually the defaults are sufficient here. We're going to do an incremental. The files that we want to do, we come down here, we say that we want to do a directory. We go out here, and I can go out to Documents directory, and it adds in the document directory there. And where to back it up, back it up there. Schedule, again, like I said, you can set, if you want a daily, weekly, monthly, whenever the machine is started up, or is there a timer to run every 30 seconds or 60 seconds? So some backup strategies, if you were a business, you probably would want it more frequently than once a day, but the average home user, once a day is more than sufficient for backing up. But if you were a business, you might be doing these backups every 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something like that. So it supports setting any of those. We won't put anything else in here. We'll leave the standard defaults in here. And so now we have a new task here. And by default here, what it did is it said this is what I just set up to back up my Documents tab. It went through and calculated that there's 12.54 gigabytes of data currently in there that meet the criteria of including and excluding there, so that's what it has, and it has 1,042 files that are in that set that it would end up backing up there. And if you wanted to, if I wanted to run it right now, I could just click the run button and run it. And so if I click on here, option comes up. You can run it. Do you want to shut down the computer when it's done? No, we won't shut down. And it starts on its way of backing up there. Yep.
It seems to me that an incremental backup by default is a full backup. So why would you ever do a full backup?
Well, the incremental is, again, takes what you currently have, compares it to what's out on your backup device. And if your backup device already has those files out there, then it doesn't have to copy those. If those files aren't out there, then it copies, or an older version, then it copies and replaces the files there. So the full back, even though I said it's incremental for me the first of the month, it ends up being a full backup because the directory is empty. So when it comes to compare, it says there's no files out here. It's going to write all 90,000 files out there that first time. The next day, all my files are out there, and so it's only the changes that I made since that last backup.
So is there any reason to ever run a full backup?
You don't have to, unless, again, you want to make sure and refresh the files. Sometimes you may want to make sure that you refresh the files on the device that you want. Then you could do a full backup. But if in my case, since I'm renaming the directory the first of the month, I end up with a full backup there.
But renaming the directory is the key thing. Some people use the same backup directory each time, so then they have to be sure to do a full backup at the first of the month or whatever their schedule is.
Right. And the package itself, what it's doing too is, so we'll stop it here because it in this case it is it do the 12 gigabytes and it's not that fast going. I've got a flash drive attached here. It's not that fast there. So let me cancel that. But what we've got is, so you can create your tasks. It'll give you your history of when stuff was done. So like this one wasn't run, but this other example here, this is what happened, or as I was playing around with it, setting it up, this is what I had it do there. and it'll tell you how many gigabytes or megabytes it backed up, and you can see based on if I had to do a full backup, the full backup was close to 2.9 gigabytes, and if I just changed a file or two, it ended up to 2.8 megabyte there.
So you can have multiple tasks, such that some files are backed up to a USB drive, others are backed up to a hard drive.
Yeah, and that's where if you had the cloud storage areas that you wanted files kind of moved around so that those are backed up, again, you can kind of plan your strategy on what files you want and how you want them backed up there. And if you did want the encryption, certainly you can encrypt a few of the files there. I wouldn't recommend encrypting everything, but if you were worried about that, I could set up one task that would encrypt maybe a handful of files and then put them up on the cloud. So you can very powerful program, lets you do things. There's settings out here too. So these are the settings for Koban, and there's log files that are created each time. Also, you can set up the mail settings, so if there's any problem with the backup, an email will be sent. So if you wanted to get a notification or stuff like that, you could get notified by email of a problem that maybe your hard drive was full or that the flash drive is no longer working or something like that. You could get an email of that. I don't use that just because I am the person using the PC, and I see this every time, so I don't need to have an email or have anything there.
This is all for free?
It's free. This is a free package there, and like I say, it's got all advanced features that you see in any package, and it's better. Some people I know will say, well, I just use File Manager and I drag and drop and move things that way. Well, this is certainly a lot easier, and especially the more directories that you have and you want to exclude files and you want to do this, and if you're doing it yourself and you have to wait for some of this stuff to end and it takes 4 hours to back up, that's a long time to wait. Whereas again, let this run at 1 at night and do its thing there.
So if you wanted to find a file that you backed up incrementally, you have to know which incremental backup was located, right?
Well, what you do, to back up, or let's say I did have a problem and I wanted to get the presentation that I just gave. I want to get at that file, the last version there. Okay, what I can do there is I can go in here. I can find my flash drive. My flash drive is drive F here. I called it backup. That's where it's currently doing its incremental backup. In the documents directory, there's a PCC directory. In this draft, here's my file. There's my file. The same directory structure that's on my C drive. And if I wanted to put this back on the C drive, I can go here, I can copy, and I can paste it back on the C drive, or I can open it from here, or I can do whatever I want from here. So that's the advantage of not encrypting or compressing. I can use a file manager. I can go in here. I don't have to go through a backup program or a restore program. I'm just essentially going out to this copy of directories, because that's essentially all Koban has done, is taken those directories and those files that I've identified and copied them onto this drive. Does that answer, Bob? Does that answer?
I was wondering if it would make a difference to find something off the differential rather than incremental, as far as the speed of being able to find that file.
I don't create a new subdirectory each time, so that's, again, a strategy. If you want to have 31 differentials for every day of the month, great, go for it. I don't need it that complicated. I just have, this out here. If I wanted to go back a year, I go to one of my other hard drives and pull it off of that hard drive. Yes?
Photos has unlimited storage, so you could do a backup of COVID to Google Photo for all your photos.
Well, Google Photos, I mean, you do have to upload the photos. So, I mean, you know, you can take your photos and upload as many as you want to Google Photos there. Now that you have them on Google Photos, then you have to ask yourself, do I want to have my own local copy? And it's not bad to have a local copy also, but now you've got multiple services. So if there was a problem somewhere, you might be able to get it from Google Photos, or you might be able to get it from your hard drive.
If you had a Google Photos and your local drive and you deleted it on your local, would it delete it on Google Photos?
Depends on how you have it set up. I do not have it set up that way. If you're using Google Photos on your smartphone or tablet and you've got the sync mechanism turned on, the sync mechanism, if you delete it off of Google Photos or you delete it locally on the smartphone or on the tablet, it deletes it up at Google Photos. So, again, depends on how you have it set up, and that's part of that is it's determined, well, if you don't want it on your phone anymore, maybe you had 3 shots of the same person and you're getting rid of 2 of them and only keeping 1. Okay? Google Photos is a service, so if I go out here and go to Google Photos, Google Photos is geared all around photos. That's all it does. It shows me the photos. I can group them into albums. I can individually work with the photos. I can create slideshows. I can do all kinds of stuff there. Google Drive. So if I go out to my Google Drive here, that's like a hard drive. This is like File Manager. I have subdirectories, directories. I have files out here, and
So if you have a Google account, you can set up Google Photos and Google Drive.
and Google Music and Google Docs. So there's Google has all these other things that can be set up. You can see there's a link here for me to easily get to Google Photos, and you can get between different things, but they are separate services and act as separate services. So if I want to do sharing of photographs, I use Google Photos. Could I put a photo out here in Google Drive? Yes, but it's not as user-friendly for the people viewing it, or if they wanted to see it, they'd have to download it. You know, there's things to do there.
You click that little checkerboard up there, it shows you all of the certain Google services.
Right. So you have a bunch of different services that you can use and stuff like that.
With Google Photos, could you put a video with there too?
Yes.
With the camera, you get video and
Unlimited video, unless you're doing 4K video. I think they charge against the space for 4K video, but every 1080p, no charge for unlimited. But there you have to evaluate, do you want it there or do you want it on YouTube? I put stuff on YouTube. I don't share my videos on Google Photos. It's my personal preference. More people are familiar with YouTube. You may have a YouTube app on your smart TV. You can access everything that way. So there's advantages in that.
Does that make it public then? You put it on YouTube? Anybody can see it?
Again, you have options when you upload it on if you want it public or not public. Most stuff people will put out there as public so that people can search for it and find it. But, you know, if you put the picture of little Bobby running around, how many people are going to watch it? Only your friends and relatives that you send a link to are going to watch it. You aren't going to get 100 million hits on little Bobby running around. And when I take the video here, I put it up on YouTube. So it's up on YouTube. This is hours worth of video that's been captured, the audio and the screenshots here. that all goes up to YouTube and is made available free of charge. Doesn't cost a thing. I put it out there. I can see, oh, we had 6 people go out there and view the video, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a great way to, YouTube is there for a good reason and serves a very good purpose, and Google Photos hasn't surpassed it with its video capability. YouTube is YouTube. Everybody goes out to YouTube. Okay, we're past our time, but I'll just mention a couple of things here. I do mention in here that backing up, if you do have a phone, you may not be aware, but your SMS messages or your text messages are not backed up. So if you want your messages backed up, you do have to have a strategy, and the strategy that I personally use is it's called SMS Backup Plus. It's a free package. It backs up your SMS threads to your email account. So within your email account, it essentially creates an entry for each of the texts there. And then if you do get a new phone, because we all, you know, you're swapping out phones. If you get a new phone, you load SMS Backup and you say, restore all my messages, and you're going to get back all your threads and all your messages on your new phone. So that's the way to back up your text messages and do stuff. Mentioned Google Photo, and again, it is a package that I highly recommend for backing up your photos. It'll automatically back them up, puts them up to a private album. So in this case, Google Photos, if I took a picture right now, it would back it up to my Google Photos, but it wouldn't share it with anyone. The only person that could see it is myself, unless I go out, put it in an album, which I've then shared, or individually share that photo and then send a link or an email to that for the person that I want to share it with. So you can easily share and that. Here I do mention for Windows 10, if you haven't done it, you can create yourself a repair disk. And the repair disk is if your system should ever crash or have a problem, you can restore it. And the way to do it is you go out to the control panel and recovery, create recovery drive. And that recovery drive can be a USB, a DVD, or a CD that can be used to restore your PC. Also on Windows, if you're not familiar, what's always taking place in the background is the system restore is turned on by default, and it creates restore points for you. So if you ever install new software and have problems with your PC and say, gee, that last package I installed did something screwy to the PC, I want to get back to how it was working yesterday or a week ago, you can use the system restore and get your machine back to the DLLs and the settings that were in place at that particular time. And that you can go through the control panel and do your stuff there. Okay, any questions? I'll mention, since I did one more thing. I'll mention one more thing. I mentioned the control panel. The control panel is different than what you see in Windows 10 here. If I go down here, this gets me to settings. Settings is not the control panel. So some people will get confused when they read stuff on the internet, go out to the control panel and do this. Settings is Windows 10 settings. It's not the control panel. To get to the control panel, or one way to get to the control panel is go down here to Windows. I can just start typing Control, and you can see there is an app out there called Control Panel. I click on Control Panel, and here's the Control Panel. And this is, if those familiar with previous versions of Windows.
Did you do that again?
What's that?
What did you do there?
Oh,
You type Control Panel?
yeah. When you first click on the window, and you can hit the Windows button down here too. So if you have your hand on the keyboard, just hit the Windows button. So if I hit the Windows button, you get up this. I can just start typing, even though technically I don't see a box to type in and I don't see anything to type in here. I can just start typing. So if I want to go somewhere, I can start typing control, CONTROL. Or let's say I was looking for the Windows update. I can just start typing and it'll have suggestions there. Well, once you see that it's suggesting what you want, you can just hit enter and it'll take you to that app, to that thing there. So you can get to the control panel very fast. The other way to get to stuff very fast in Windows 10 is if you're not using Cortana, I highly recommend using Cortana. That's the voice assistant. So you have the voice assistant down here, and just like just like Amazon, Alexa, or on your phone, or Siri, or anything like that, you can do voice commands. So you could say control panel to Cortana, and it would start it up too. And that's what I do at home. I just click on that. I have a mic right on my PC, and so I use that to do all the searches and save me from having to type it all there. Okay. Now we're done, I guess. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I had a friend ask for a recommendation for a laptop. Is there any reason to recommend one brand, Dell or Asus or Acer or Lenovo over another?
Well, it's,
or are you just looking for the features?
I look at the features first and have the person say exactly how they kind of want to use it, because some people will say that they want a laptop when actually a tablet would very easily suffice for what they need.
Right.
And also now you get into, well, do you need a laptop with Windows, or maybe a Chromebook is adequate? Or do you need a gaming laptop, with loads of memory and a fast CPU? But for the most part, most people can get by with a laptop like this.
They're doing internet browsing and they're doing email, and that's just about it.
And that's where a Chromebook would work fine, or a tablet if
they
they're.
don't want to touch the touch screen.
Well, that's where Chromebooks are cheaper even than this. Now
This is a guy my age, except he's a little more technologically challenged. Doesn't want to touch panels.
because this PC, it's not the fastest PC in the world. It's got a 15.5-inch screen. I paid $289 for it, and that's usually more than sufficient for most people there.
Pentium chip, but i3.
This has,
you wouldn't need more than that, I wouldn't think.
No, and it's more the amount of memory that you want. And so if you're going to be running Windows 10, then having at least 6, if not 8 gigabytes of RAM there. Some of the machines just come with 4. Well, 4 is barely enough to run Windows, and it ends up having to swap out. But, for $250, you can get good. Now, if somebody said, I want a laptop, I use it all day long, disconnected, then you want a good battery. Well, these cheaper laptops, the batteries don't last as long. So there's reasons that there's laptops for $500, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. There's additional features and functions.
Nothing to pick by brand, in other words. In other words, no reason to go with Dell versus Asus versus.
I'm not a real fan of Dell. Dell is proprietary and all their stuff. So if you wanted to change anything in the computer, you have to buy it from Dell. Dell, you tend to pay more money than the comparable machines. The largest selling PC or laptops is HP. So if you're looking to go with the most popular, HP is the most popular. And where to buy them? You can walk into Walmart, you can walk into Sam's, almost any place has the HPs.
I ended up with a Dell desktop the last time I bought, just because that's what Best Buy had, and it seemed.
Yeah.
And now I've got an issue where it keeps putting up a screen saying,
oh,
Ooh, good thing you got your hand up.
Dell
I got
has,
my
You
hand on
almost
it.
got a new laptop.
No, Phil, I got my both hands on it now after this
I'm
experience.
saying Dell has an update, and you click install. Half an hour later, it says Dell has an update. Click install. I can't make the thing go away. Even though I keep telling it to install, it doesn't seem to be installing.
Yeah, then it would be in TFS, so
Yeah, it depends on how they run it, you know, what's going on there, but,